Not from the kids. Make a comeback, Nixie. No. No, the kids are great. Yeah, sign an autograph and a jumper, and it's good to have them out there, to be honest. It's been 2 years of not having that. So it was nice to have them along the boundary line, supporting the boys.
Just get the Matt Crouch question.
Oh, that's the advice you were talking about?
Yeah.
Selection advice?
Yeah.
No, I get plenty of advice in that space. That's okay. No, look, more so what we've got in there is more on where that selection decision comes. Matty was laid in last week for Shane, so Shane back this week, Hinge back this week, both out with different reasons, injury and health and safety. So those two coming back in meant we made a little bit of a change in other areas and moved some pieces around. And so we're back to that midfield now that went up against Melbourne and North Melbourne. It's a different balance, it's a different mix of players through there. So it's a tough one for Matty, but Sam Berry is improving in there constantly. Saligo's getting more time through there. Schoenberg's now back in, getting a little bit more time. So our dynamic in and around the footy looks different this week again. We're back to what we were a few weeks ago.
Can I ask, how did Matty take you, given you came back for the one game, back out again?
Look, as any player would, wants to play AFL footy. So disappointed, but also there's an understanding there of what had happened the week prior, and with a number going out and then coming back in. So we looked at it, Shane McAdams' year. We didn't take a risk with Shane at all in the end, and we gave him an extra week, just to be sure of that ankle. So his form this year has warranted him coming straight back in. And, Hinge coming off the health and safety protocols, again, it's one we were really pleased with the form he had v Melbourne. Went up against an outstanding opposition or opponent in that game and played some pretty good footy. So we wanted to get him back and give him the opportunity again. So, the ins were ones we were really pleased to have coming back in and bolster the group.
I know you said last week that you were told Crouchy that you wanted here next year.
Yep.
If he was to request a trade, would you stand in his way?
Oh, look, we never stand in a player's way. We work with that player on, what we can do to make it best for them and best for the footy club. There's two sides to all of this, but I'm in no uncertain terms. I've sat down with Matty and said he's part of what we are doing at this footy club, and a big part of that. At the moment, and they're the key words, at the moment, we've got a midfield group that we feel are playing some pretty good footy and had done prior to last weekend. We didn't quite get that done to the level we wanted last weekend. The balance in there was different. We're really impressed with what some of these young guys are doing and I guess how fast they're tracking in their development. So we want to continue to push that. And Matty will get his way back into the team, as the form warrants it. And then selection will look after itself.
How does he believe that he is a big part of what you're doing and you will get back in the team? Form has been maybe looking for something different than what we're seeing, but how does Crouchy believe that there is a way back if he's done everything he can do?
I think I've answered it. Are you going to ask me it in 1,000 different ways? And I can't speak for Crouchy on how he deals with that. All I can say is we sit down weekly and we'll have a discussion, a conversation. This week's was a lot shorter than the week prior. This week was a lot shorter, and I'm not saying that was purely amicable with the two of us chatting back and forth. It was okay. He understands, two coming back in and what we're doing in that midfield area at the moment. He'll continue to work on his game. He knows exactly what it is we're looking to do. So that's not easy to take though. But at the same time, we're playing a group in that midfield at the moment that we feel that warrants the opportunity in there.
So do you think it would be easy for a player in this situation to want to stay at a club if he's consistently in
I would say we have this challenge more often than you'd believe. This is weekly, and that is probably why the discussion's there. Is Matty is a club champion. He's an All-Australian. He's a best and fairest, and so when Matty can get that form back that he showed in those years, and we can look at the balance of our midfield group, then he will be back into our side. And so that's the clarity that's there. again, we could continue to talk through it. I'll keep coming back to, well, who are you going to take out of our midfield? Because it's easy to say who's not in. Well, we're really, we're so impressed with some of the development of this group. Sam Berry won, Jake Saligo. I mean, you're going to find it hard pressed. We're going to sit here and talk about Jake Saligo, and you're going to ask me the question on why Jake Saligo's not in if we're not picking him. So it's a tough challenge, and that's part of selection. But I understand exactly where the conversation comes from. I understand why that sometimes there's a fair bit of advice flying around on what we need to do. We just make sure our players are clear on what it is we're looking for, and we'll continue to develop as a group.
So you sent 3 back to the sample. Was there a discussion about sending even more, given how disappointed you were with the result?
No. I mean, we were disappointed with the way we went about last weekend. We missed a lot of the detail, unfortunately. And we've put that performance out on Marvel for whatever reason. A number of times where we've come away really disappointed. We know exactly why on the weekend, and so we got that cleared up during the week. I wouldn't say lengthy meetings, but enough to say, hey, detail's important. We come up against a team this week that are very, very good with their detail. And, Collingwood are playing some great footy. They're in good form. They like to compete. They like to fight. I've said this before, so do we. But unfortunately on the weekend, we came away from that game, not proud of what we put out there in the fighting space.
What was the review of that first quarter in particular? What sort of did you pick up out of that and just trying to...
Well, a fair bit around basically treating the ball like gold. We were very flippant with the footy. We were happy to throw it away and give it back to our opposition. That was the first quarter. Unfortunately, it went for longer than the first quarter. In review, we probably immediately after the game thought it was a first quarter issue. It was first half. So we've done a hell of a lot of work on that this week. And there's a number of things we expect from the group that we'll see early in the game. We'll know within 5 or 10 minutes whether we're switched on in that area. And that makes it hard then when then you start chasing the game as a group, and especially as a young group. We chase the game, we go away from what we do. And to Hawthorn's credit, don't want to take it away, and we've moved on from the Hawks, to be honest. We're on to Collingwood. But to their credit, they really did bring the heat early, and we didn't handle it.
So how do you juggle the development of Berry and the development of Saligo? Saligo's been fantastic. So like, when you talk about a team that's ready with skills, Crouchy's kicking 50, I think he averages 75. His retention rate for the disposal with hand and foot by foot, I think he's second only to Dawson in terms of percentage and kicking to a teammate. How do you juggle the sort of development of those guys as opposed to a bloke who does execute by hand and by foot and keeping the ball?
Yeah, it's a good question. We're constantly looking at that balance of our group. We got a certain style of the way we play our footy as well. We know there's an issue at the moment around our execution, and we're hand up. We're doing a lot of work on that, and that's the polish that we'd like to have on top of our game. But as I said last week, we didn't bring the DNA that we bring, so it can look quite ugly when you don't have that at the same time. But that's our constant work on, Theo. We're heads down. We're going to work now. I believe, as I've mentioned, the guys we're talking about with development, I believe a number of them are that far away from the game, becoming, a little bit more, a little slower. They get up to speed. All of a sudden, those skills, those executions, those kicks that we're not connecting with, mids to forward, all of a sudden that game starts to come. I've got no doubt we're not far off that.
I heard David Noble talk about how the win-loss industry can consume, and there's no sort of room for sentiment to win or you don't. Do you ever feel that pressure in terms of trusting the process you're on, and then all of a sudden if losses continue to stack up as a coach, it traditionally doesn't end well? I'm not saying you're in that position, but do you feel that pressure of the win-loss expectation?
Yeah, we're in. Well, fortunately, because I actually really enjoy it, but we're in a win-loss industry. It's a performance industry, high performance. So there is a point where it comes, we're there to win games of footy, and we're constantly picking the side around that and around the longer term. We want sustained success. So there's always that pressure there. But we've walked off the ground here over the last 2 years and had performances where we haven't won the game, and yet had people in the stand up on their feet cheering the guys off for the effort that was put in and the way they played the game of footy. And there are teams in the competition at the moment that have so much experience that statistically, if you look at it, it's going to be a challenge to beat those sides. But you put up a performance that you're proud of when you walk off. Ultimately, that's what we're after. And we know that that will get us the results we're after. So that'll get our win-loss where it needs to be. With a young group, the challenge with that is doing it week after week or quarter after quarter. And that's been our issue. We've been in the fight for the majority of the year. We have the odd game where we really let ourselves and our supporters down, and that's where we sit this week. And this week's one of the hardest weeks we have as a group, because we want the week to start on Wednesday. We want to play Collingwood Wednesday, so we can move on from the Hawthorn performance.
Last two guys.
But
When on this rebuild timeline do you expect to be challenging for finals and making finals?
we feel we're challenging in games at the moment. I mean, we're mindful of mentioning the word finals, but we go back over this season and you look at the games that we've played where we've been in the game till midway through the last quarter, maybe found ourselves make a few errors in those moments, drop behind, and then we've gone all out to try and win the game of footy. So changed the way we play, gone a little bit more attacking, and we end up losing the game by a larger margin. But we've said right throughout the year we're going to try to win games of footy. That shows how close we are. You know, we've knocked off Richmond, we've knocked off the Western Bulldogs when they were, going as well as they were. We know we can beat the best sides in the competition. We also know we can, unfortunately, lose to the sides that aren't fighting for finals. And that's our challenge. And you find that turns really quickly. If you look at a lot of the rebuilds over the years, there is a really quick turnaround. You go back and look at Brizzy and some of the games they played just prior to them bouncing back, fighting out for top four. And that's where we strongly believe we're on that path. We believe our momentum at this point is going in the right direction. At the moment this week, we sit in a position where we're just really disappointed with last week's performance. But we'll right the ship.
Previously, you said it's not about win-loss, it's more about the process. Is that a mischaracterisation? I know you pick teams to win, but are you sort of looking at next year being the time when you start to see some benefit, or is it win-loss now, or is it process now?
It's process, as I just said then. Win-loss will look after itself when you get it right. So we don't go into a game. We're obviously trying to win every game we're in. But that is not the focus. The focus is actually performing the way we want to perform. Get the game on our terms. Play with our DNA. Ultimately, when we have a conversation pre-game, we want to walk off the ground at the end of the game, have entertained our members and supporters and made them proud of what they've come and watched. That's one of our KPIs. We didn't do that on the weekend, so we missed the KPI.